Michael came home late that evening, exhausted from a long day at work. The house was quiet, too quiet. Usually the sound of his 5 children laughing, arguing, or calling for their mother filled the air. But tonight, there was only silence. He placed his briefcase by the door and called out, "Laura, kids, I'm home." His voice echoed through the house, but no one responded. Confused, he walked into the kitchen. The table was bare, and dinner hadn't been prepared. On the counter sat an envelope with his name on it. Michael's hands trembled as he opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from his wife. "Laura, Michael, I can't do this anymore. The stress, the responsibilities, it's all too much for me. I need to find myself again. I'm leaving, and I won't be coming back. Take care of the kids. I know you'll do better than I ever could. Laura." Michael stared at the letter, his mind racing. She was gone, just like that. He read the words over and over, hoping they would change. But they didn't. A small voice broke through his thoughts. "Dad?" Michael turned to see Emily, his eldest daughter, standing in the doorway. Behind her were the other 4 children, their faces a mix of confusion and worry. "Where's Mom?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. Michael swallowed hard, forcing himself to stay calm. She had to leave for a while," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "But don't worry, I'm here. We'll figure this out together." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes, and the younger children clung to each other, sensing something was wrong. Michael knelt down, pulling them all into a tight hug. "It's going to be okay," he whispered, more to himself than to them. "We'll be okay." That night, after tucking the children into bed, Michael sat alone at the kitchen table. The weight of what had happened pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. He thought about Laura, about the promises they had made to each other, and about the life they had built together. But there was no time to dwell on what was lost. He had 5 children who needed him now more than ever. He couldn't afford to fall apart. The next morning, Michael woke up early, determined to keep the household running. He made breakfast, packed school lunches, and helped the kids get ready. It was messy and chaotic, but he managed. As he dropped the kids off at school, Emily turned to him and said, "Dad, are you sure we're going to be okay?" Michael forced a smile, hiding his own uncertainty. "I promise, Emily, we'll be okay." Driving home, Michael knew he had to keep that promise. It wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to give his children the life they deserved, even if it meant doing it alone. The first week without Laura was the hardest. Michael felt like he was drowning, trying to keep up with everything at once. The mornings were chaotic, with 5 kids all needing his attention at the same time. Emily tried to help, but even she was overwhelmed by the sudden change. "Dad, I can't find my socks," one of the twins shouted from upstairs. "Can I have cereal for breakfast?" asked the youngest, tugging at his sleeve. "Dad, don't forget my science project," Emily reminded him as she packed her backpack. Michael rushed around the house, trying to manage it all. He burned the toast, spilled coffee on his shirt, and almost forgot to pack the youngest's lunch. By the time he dropped the kids off at school, he felt like he had run a marathon. At work, it was no better. His boss noticed he wasn't as focused, and Michael found himself constantly worrying about how the kids were doing at home. Were they okay? Did they miss Laura as much as he did? His heart ached, but he pushed those feelings aside. He didn't have time to feel sorry for himself. Each night, after putting the kids to bed, Michael sat at the kitchen table, staring at a pile of bills. Without Laura, money was tight. Her leaving meant they lost her part-time income. And Michael realized he had to be smarter about their expenses. He started making lists of what they truly needed, cutting out anything unnecessary. The house, once lively and cheerful, felt heavy with silence. The children missed their mother, and their sadness showed in small ways. Emily tried to act strong, but Michael could see the worry in her eyes. The younger ones often asked, "When is Mom coming back?" Michael didn't know how to answer. Despite the struggles, Michael began to notice something remarkable. The kids were trying to help in their own ways. Emily took on the role of the big sister, helping the younger ones with homework and chores. The twins started setting the table for dinner without being asked, and the youngest drew pictures to cheer up his dad. One night, as Michael tucked them in, Emily spoke up. "Dad, I know this is hard for you, but you're doing a good job. We're okay because of you." Michael felt tears sting his eyes. "Thanks, sweetheart. I'm trying my best for all of you." The next morning, Michael woke up with a renewed sense of determination. He didn't know how, but he would make this work. He couldn't replace Laura, but he could create a stable, loving home for his children. Together, they would find a way forward. Slowly, things started to fall into place. Michael created a schedule to keep everything organized. The kids learned to help more, and the family began to adjust. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and that was enough for now. Weeks turned into months, and Michael began to find his footing as a single parent. Life was still hectic, but the family had started to develop a routine. Mornings were no longer a mad scramble, and evenings became a time for everyone to come together. The small victories gave Michael hope. Michael learned how to cook, not fancy meals, but ones the kids loved. Pasta nights became a favorite, with everyone pitching in. The twins would grate cheese, Emily would help chop vegetables, and the youngest, always eager, would set the table. The sound of their laughter filled the kitchen, reminding Michael that they were still a family, even without Laura. One evening after dinner, Emily approached Michael while the younger kids played in the living room. "Dad, can I talk to you?" she asked. "Of course, sweetheart," Michael said, putting down the dish he was washing. "I know you're trying really hard," she began, her voice quiet. "And I want to help more. Maybe I can babysit the little ones sometimes, or help with homework." Michael smiled at her, feeling a swell of pride. "You're already helping so much, Emily. You don't have to do everything. Just knowing you're there for your siblings means a lot to me." Emily nodded, her eyes serious. "I just want us to be okay." Michael hugged her tightly. "We will be. I promise." As the weeks went by, the children began to adapt. They became more independent, helping with chores and looking out for one another. The twins, once prone to bickering, started working together, whether it was cleaning their room or building Lego towers. The youngest, inspired by his siblings, began drawing pictures of the family and proudly hanging them on the fridge. Michael found strength in their resilience. He worked long hours during the day, but made sure to be present when he was home. He attended school events, helped with homework, and listened when the kids needed to talk. Each night, he tucked them in, reminding them how much they were loved. One evening, Michael sat down at the table with a stack of bills and a notepad. Money was tight, but he was determined to make it work. He created a budget, cutting out unnecessary expenses and finding creative ways to save. He started taking on extra shifts at work, knowing every bit helped. Despite the challenges, Michael began to feel a sense of pride. He was doing it, raising 5 kids on his own. It wasn't easy, but the love and support of his children made it all worthwhile. One night, as Michael read a bedtime story to the youngest, the little boy looked up at him and said, "You're the best dad ever." Michael smiled, his heart full. "Thanks, buddy. You're the best, too." As he turned off the light and closed the door, Michael felt a newfound confidence. They were a team, and together, they could handle anything. Life was far from perfect, but Michael and his children were managing. Every day brought its own set of challenges, but they faced them together as a family. Michael had learned how to juggle his responsibilities, though some days tested his patience and strength. One Friday morning, as Michael prepared breakfast, the youngest, Ben, ran into the kitchen holding a torn shoe. "Dad, my shoe broke," he said, holding it up for Michael to see. Michael sighed, glancing at the stack of bills on the counter. Replacing the shoe wasn't in the budget this month, But he knew Ben couldn't go to school with broken shoes. "Don't worry, buddy," Michael said, ruffling his son's hair. "I'll fix it tonight." The older kids overheard and began offering ideas. "Dad, I think there's some super glue in the drawer," one of the twins suggested. Michael smiled at their resourcefulness and made a mental note to repair the shoe after work. That evening, as the kids played a board game in the living room, Michael sat at the kitchen table, carefully gluing Ben's shoe back together. It wasn't perfect, but it would hold until he could afford a new pair. When he handed the shoe to Ben, the little boy grinned. "Thanks, Dad. You're the best." Moments like that reminded Michael why he worked so hard. Still, the bigger challenges weighed heavily on him. One day, he received a call from the school about Emily. She had been struggling with her grades, and her teacher was concerned. Michael felt a pang of guilt. He had been so focused on providing for the family that he hadn't noticed. That evening, he sat down with Emily at the kitchen table. "I heard from your teacher today," he began gently. "She said you're having some trouble with your grades. What's going on?" Emily hesitated, then admitted, "It's hard to focus sometimes, Dad. I'm always thinking about helping you and the little ones. I guess I'm just tired." Michael's heart ached. He reached out and took her hand. "Emily, you've been amazing. You've helped me more than I can say. But your schoolwork is important too. Let's figure out how to make it easier for you, okay?" Together, they came up with a plan. Michael promised to take on more of the household responsibilities so Emily could focus on her studies. He also asked the twins to help more with chores, making it clear that they were all in this together. The next few weeks were tough, but the changes paid off. Emily's grades began to improve, and the family started to feel more balanced. Michael was exhausted most days, but the love and teamwork within the family kept him going. One night, as Michael sat on the couch with all 5 kids watching a movie, he looked around at their smiling faces and felt a deep sense of pride. They had faced so much, but they were stronger because of it. No matter what challenges lay ahead, he knew they would overcome them together. The years rolled on, and Michael's hard work began to show in his family. The once chaotic and uncertain household had grown into a stable, loving environment. Each of his 5 children was thriving in their own way, and Michael couldn't be prouder. Emily, now a young woman, had blossomed into a natural leader. She was in her final year of high school and had recently been accepted to a prestigious college. The news had brought tears to Michael's eyes. "You did this, Dad," Emily told him one evening. "If it weren't for your sacrifices and hard work, I wouldn't have made it this far." Michael shook his head, smiling. "No, Emily, you earned this. I'm just so proud of you." The twins, Jacob and Sophia, had discovered their passions as well. Jacob had joined the school soccer team and had become one of its star players. Michael made it a point to attend every game, cheering loudly from the stands. Sophia, on the other hand, had developed a love for art. The house was filled with her colorful paintings and drawings, each one better than the last. Michael had even framed some of her pieces, turning the walls of their home into a small gallery. Ben, the youngest, was growing up fast. Now in middle school, he was known for his big heart and curious mind. He often stayed up late asking Michael questions about the world, and Michael loved every moment of it. "Dad, how do planes stay in the air?" Ben asked one night as they sat on the porch. "Well," Michael began, "it's something called lift. I'll show you a video about it tomorrow. Maybe one day you'll design planes yourself." "Maybe," Ben said, his eyes lighting up. Michael's pride in his children was matched only by his gratitude for the journey they had been on together. He often thought back to those early days when everything felt impossible. Now their family was proof of what love and determination could achieve. One of the biggest milestones came when Emily's high school held its annual awards night. Michael sat in the audience, surrounded by other proud parents, as Emily's name was called. She walked onto the stage to accept the Student of the Year award. As she gave her acceptance speech, She looked directly at Michael. "This award isn't just mine," she said, her voice steady but emotional. "It belongs to my dad, too. He's taught me the value of hard work, kindness, and perseverance. Everything I've achieved is because of him." Michael felt his throat tighten as the audience applauded. Tears filled his eyes as he clapped for his daughter. In that moment, every late night, every sacrifice, every challenge felt worth it. When they returned home that night, the kids surprised Michael with a cake they had baked. "To the best dad in the world," the icing read. Michael laughed, his heart full. "I don't know about the best, but I've got the best kids in the world," he said, pulling them into a group hug. One quiet Saturday morning, Michael was enjoying a rare moment of peace. The kids were scattered around the house, each busy with their own activities. Emily was packing for college, the twins were playing a board game, and Ben was outside drawing on the driveway with chalk. Michael sat on the porch, sipping coffee, reflecting on how far they had come as a family. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. He picked it up to see an unfamiliar number calling. Hesitant, he answered. "Hello." There was a pause before a familiar voice spoke. "Michael, it's me, Laura." Michael froze, the coffee cup shaking slightly in his hand. It had been 10 years since she left, and in all that time, she had never reached out. "Laura," he said, his voice steady. "What do you want?" I'm back in town," she said, her voice faltering. "I'd like to see the kids. And you." Michael felt a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and curiosity. Why now? What had changed? He thought about his children and how hard they had worked to move forward without her. "I need to think about it," he said finally. "The kids come first." Laura sighed. "I understand. Please let me know." That evening, Michael sat the kids down in the living room. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice calm but serious. "Your mom is back in town. She wants to see you." The room fell silent. Emily, now more mature and composed, was the first to speak. "Why now? After all these years?" Michael nodded. "I don't know. But I wanted to ask how you feel about it. It's your choice if you want to see her." The twins looked at each other, unsure. Ben, still young, asked softly, "Does she still love us?" Michael's heart broke a little at the question. "I'm sure she does, Ben," he said gently. "But love is complicated, and sometimes people make mistakes." After a long discussion, the kids decided they wanted to meet her, but only if Michael was there too. Michael agreed, and they arranged to meet at a local park the next day. When Laura arrived, she looked nervous, holding a small bag in her hands. The children were sitting on a picnic blanket with Michael, who stood when he saw her. Laura's eyes filled with tears as she saw her family together for the first time in years. "You've all grown so much," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I've missed you." Emily spoke up, her tone firm but not unkind. "Why did you leave us?" Laura hesitated, then answered honestly. "I was scared. I felt overwhelmed, and I didn't know how to handle it. I know that's not an excuse. I've regretted it every single day." The kids listened, each processing her words in their own way. Michael stayed silent, letting them take the lead. It was their moment, and he wanted them to have it. By the end of the conversation, Laura asked for their forgiveness. It wasn't an easy decision, but the family agreed to take things slowly. Michael knew this was just the beginning of a complicated new chapter. After their first meeting with Laura, the children were left with mixed feelings. Emily was cautious but willing to see where things might go. The twins were curious, asking questions about why she had left and what her life had been like since. Ben, being the youngest, was still unsure how to feel. Michael watched quietly as his children navigated this emotional situation, ready to step in if they needed him. A week later, Laura asked to meet with them again, this time at their home. Michael hesitated but eventually agreed. He knew that while he had been the rock for his family, the children had their own relationship with their mother that they needed to figure out. When Laura arrived, she was visibly nervous. Michael welcomed her in, keeping his tone neutral. The children sat around the living room, waiting for her to speak. "I want to thank you for giving me another chance," Laura began, her voice shaky. "I know I hurt you all when I left. It was the hardest decision I ever made, and I regret it every day." The room was quiet as she continued. "I wasn't strong back then. I felt overwhelmed and trapped, but those are excuses. I should have stayed and fought for us. Instead, I ran away, and I left you all to pick up the pieces. I'm so sorry." Emily, always the bold one, spoke up first. "Why now? Why did it take you 10 years to come back?" Laura looked down, her hands clasped tightly together. "I wasn't ready before. I was ashamed. But then I heard about how amazing you all have become, and I realized I needed to face what I'd done. I wanted to see the incredible people you've grown into." The twins chimed in, their questions overlapping. "Where did you go? Did you ever think about us?" Laura nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I thought about you every single day. I kept track of your lives from a distance, but I was too scared to reach out. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope I can earn it." Ben, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Are you staying this time?" Laura turned to him, her eyes full of sincerity. "If you'll let me. I want to be part of your lives, but only if that's what you want." Michael, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. "This is their decision, Laura. I've done my best to give them a good life, and I won't let anything disrupt that. But if they're willing to give you a chance, I'll support them." The children looked at one another, then at their father. Emily spoke for the group. "We'll give you a chance, but you have to prove that you're here for us this time." Laura nodded, her face a mixture of relief and determination. "I will. I promise." That night, as the family sat together at the dinner table, Michael felt a glimmer of hope. It wouldn't be easy, but they had faced challenges before. This was another step in their journey, and together, they would figure it out. The days after Laura's return were filled with cautious but hopeful steps forward. She started visiting regularly, trying to rebuild the trust she had lost. Each child responded differently. Emily kept her guard up. The twins were curious but wary, and Ben warmed to her more quickly, eager to ask questions and share his life. Michael watched it all unfold with a mix of pride and concern. He knew the journey wouldn't be easy, but he was determined to ensure his children's happiness remained the priority. One weekend, Laura suggested they all spend a day together at the park. The kids were hesitant at first, but Michael encouraged them to give it a try. "It's just one day," he said. "Let's see how it goes." At the park, the children gradually relaxed. Laura brought snacks and games, and they spent the afternoon playing soccer, flying kites, and sharing stories. For the first time, laughter filled the air, and it felt like a glimpse of what could be. During a quiet moment, Laura sat beside Michael on a bench. "Thank you for giving me this chance," she said softly. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness." Michael glanced at her, his expression calm but firm. "This isn't about me, Laura. It's about the kids. They deserve to have both parents in their lives, as long as it's healthy for them." She nodded, her voice trembling. "I'll keep showing them I'm here for good this time." Back at home, the family started to establish a new rhythm. Laura didn't live with them, but visited often, gradually becoming more involved in their lives. She attended the twin school events, helped Ben with his homework, and even sat down with Emily to talk about college. Each small act helped rebuild the bridges she had burned. One evening after dinner, Emily approached Michael in the kitchen. "Dad," she said, "I'm still not sure how I feel about Mom, but I wanted to thank you for everything. You held us together when she left, and we wouldn't be who we are without you." Michael smiled, pulling her into a hug. "I'm proud of you, Emily, all of you. No matter what happens, we'll always have each other." A few weeks later, Laura joined them for a family dinner. As they sat around the table, sharing stories and laughter, Michael looked at his children, and felt a sense of peace. The journey hadn't been easy, but they had come so far. That night, as the kids went to bed, Laura approached Michael. "You've done an incredible job with them," she said. "They're strong, kind, and everything a parent could hope for." Michael nodded. "They're amazing kids, and they've taught me just as much as I taught them." As Laura left, Michael stood on the porch, watching her drive away. He knew the future would have its challenges, but he also knew his family was stronger than ever. They had faced the hardest times together, and now they were moving forward, ready for whatever came next.